Thank you. Okay, well, let's speed things up. The agenda is very short for tonight's meeting. I did circulate the minutes and of the February 2nd meeting. I know you weren't there, Jason.
Yep.
But if you guys, including myself, could raise our hands and approve them, then I'll get them put on the website, on the LMT website. So I don't know if you've had a chance. Yeah, okay.
I read them. Yep.
Approved.
Yep.
Thank you. Apologies, I've got Bernie Grieger and Jason McFarlane. Which brings us very quickly to the PICO responses. I don't know if you saw the PICO response, Jason, from
I did. I did.
Actually, I was very impressed because he spent a lot of time. He put in what, I've got 2 pages worth here of responses.
Yeah, I would actually tell you that I was disappointed that he didn't agree to meet with the BOS, but I read the pretty thorough responses. So I guess the trade-off was that he was thorough in his sharing of information.
Well, 2 things impressed me. One was the speed at which it got in front of PICO. And thank you, John. We see you've joined.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Previously, we've had to go through a very convoluted process of getting something to the Board of Supervisors and via the township manager, and that certainly didn't happen in this case.
Yep, thank you.
And or at least the township manager now was presumably, John, he forwarded it on to Ted Duran, and Ted Duran answered.
Yes, yes. So the new township manager, Dave Kratzer, was very fast on it and was great. So yeah, I was pleased that we were able to at least get an invite out and give it a shot. And yeah, we got a response back that was at least is relatively detailed, which is good.
Yeah. I don't want to read it all out now, but he talked about the capital investments, and one of them, of course, as you know, has been going from our last meeting, has been going on around me in Yardley Hunt. They've been relaying all of the underground cable, quite a massive undertaking. But it highlighted the fact that despite the fact that we've had underground cable feeding Yardley Hump, which is what, 600 odd homes, it hasn't been that reliable. In fact, I think at the end, Ted Duran said there are 3.5% of the people have had 4 or more outages in the past year. And I think my house might have been one of those.
Yeah, the aluminum shielding on the underground cables goes bad after about 20 years, is what I've been told. And that's why a lot of the underground cables are being replaced. And I think it was a certain segment of when those houses were built and the type of cable they were using at the time.
Yeah, it's got a, yes. As an electrical engineer, I would challenge that point, but anyway, we won't go into that. If that's what we're being told, we have to believe it, don't we? So,
as the son of an electrical engineer, I will respect your judgment.
The cable I've seen damaged has been damaged by lightning, and people, of course, don't think that lightning can damage anything underground, but of course it does, because lightning doesn't stop when it hits the grass. It does actually flow through the ground, and that can induce all sorts of problems in cable. But yes, the cable I've seen failed, the aluminum clad cable, looks rather worse for wear. Anyway, so they're replacing that. And the stuff that's laying in the street, were you on then? Lee brought it up. We've got two significant street level high voltage cables laying in Yardley Hunt. The longest lived one is on Randolph Drive. It's been there almost 12 months, high voltage cable laying in the street. And there's another one on Ward Drive, which actually goes across the street. And, fortunately, we haven't had any snow, but if a snow plow had been around and hit that, then it would have been quite spectacular. But that didn't happen. And
what is the public safety risk of those cables? I mean, you sort of alluded to if a plow had hit them, but
yeah.
I mean, it would feel to me that there is a ongoing sort of pending event because of that. I mean, I'm wondering how we might accelerate awareness for the purposes of avoidance of a problem, for lack of a better word.
Well, the cable is very tough. It's armored. It's cladding around it, and I guess if you hit it hard with a fire axe or something, you could probably get through it. But that might be the last thing you saw, because
I would imagine, yeah,
it's running at quite a few thousand volts, and there'd be a big bang and a flash, and that would be quite spectacular. So obviously, this is quite common for PICO and as a solution, a temporary solution. So is there a safety risk? I don't know.
I mean, it's temporary. It's been there like on Randolph a long time. And Ward Drive has been there. It's got to be a couple of months at least.
At least 3 months, yeah.
Well, let me ask, because I'm unfamiliar, obviously, with those two particular sites, but is there ongoing work around there that is causing the? Okay.
Yes.
So it's okay, so they're aware, and it's part of their normal management of the lines around other work. Okay.
Yes, they will. Those cables should, I assume, disappear as soon as they start to reconnect the new cable they've laid. Once they start putting that in service, yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, getting back to Ted Duran's answer, he said a number of aerial wire. I know you're interested in aerial wire replacement, Jason. He said there's a number of aerial wire replacement projects going on in the vicinity of Big Oak, Arbor Lee, Elm, and Birch Roads. But I know that one of your issues was the overhead wire fed behind houses. So,
well, there had been that discussion about the movement, I understood, to the front of the properties at some point. I think residents, when that starts occurring, are going to be a little bit concerned about it. But I don't know if there's any resolution to it, and there's no authority on behalf of the township to intervene. But I think we had talked with him when we had our conversation, if you guys can correct me, about communication with the residents being key on that.
Yes, and the thing that surprised me, communication with the residents. I'm thinking about the communication during an outage.
Yes.
And he said that, that the improvements, I'm reading between the lines here, the improvements that we recommended, 18 months ago, we sent a list of improvements that we suggested to PICO, and they're supposed to be implementing those. He says that is going on through 2025. I don't know, but it seems to me like if you want to change a few words in an outage message, it shouldn't take the next 2 years. But anyway, so I obviously don't understand what's involved in changing their outage management system. So
I think therein lies the rub, right? Like we don't know what the process is.
No.
It seemed like it was primarily for our conversations. I think one of the key drivers, John, just so you're aware, we were concerned about outages happen. There's, sort of the systemic failures that are going to occur. But I think one of the frustrations a lot of residents, and you probably know this better than we do, not knowing and having enough valid or decent information to judge the length of the outages, so they can plan appropriately. So, that is something that I think, short of infrastructural, augmentation, you can manage expectations through. And these guys will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the idea was that he had indicated that the smart meters would give them better insight onto where the specific outages were, and therefore they'd be more able to provide information based on work crews estimates for correction. So I think to John K's point that 2025 as a window, it's 2023 is still a long ways to go, with the potential of major events like we had this past weekend actually having longer outages. So it's just something we should stay on top of.
Yeah. Now,
Did we have any outages this weekend? And because I don't recall, which we had very high winds, right?
No, I just meant that we had the weather,
Yeah.
not necessarily. Well, my generator kicked on over here, but it was just for a few minutes. Nothing that was sustained.
yeah, our lights dipped a number of times, but they didn't go completely out, and they came back on, went out again, or just dipped and came back on, but that was it. We were lucky. I've never seen a storm like that in Lower Makefield. It was the roar that I hadn't heard before. Sounded like a freight train.
Well, yeah, this tornado stuff is new for our area. Was it last year or the year before? We had the tornado touchdown in Upper Dublin, and took out actually the police response center in Upper Dublin and a car dealership and that stuff. I mean, I've spent almost my entire life here, and I mean, we've never had tornadoes like that.
I think I think I was out having dinner in like the Warminster area, coming back on the turnpike that night. That's the one I think that hit the car delership you're talking about. Yeah, that was right off of the Pennsylvania Turnpike near the Route 1 exit. Yeah. Well, that's interesting because I don't think that's going away. The only storm I recall of real girth in this township was kind of when I first moved in 26, 27 years ago. There was a weather system that sort of stalled right over the township and kept circulating back, and we were deluged for like an hour from something that would normally, remember that? Yeah,
8 inches. I remember it because being in the fire company, we were involved in quite a few rescues that night.
Oh yeah.
There was the stream by Brookside on Stony Hill Road. The stream by Brookside was 100 yards wide.
Well, I was on the wrong side of that stream that night, so I was stuck up at the Giant for several hours. That had no power.
That was a heck of a storm.
Yeah. I mean, my general comments on Ted's response was that, as I think we all concur, it was fairly detailed. The other impression I got, guys, was that he kind of, heard our committee in the way that we ask questions. And then I think, John, I'd be interested, in your perspective as a supervisor, just to detail the answer, and also whether or not you felt like it would have still been nice for them to meet with you guys, or you're satisfied that you've got communication.
Well, I kind of view this, in a long arc in terms of where we were, say, 10, 15 years ago with PICO and where we're at now. And we're dramatically better. And so if I were PICO, I'd actually want to tell that story a little bit. And we're not the only community who's gone through that. And there are other communities, namely Chester County, that have the same kind of problems that we do, where they haven't had the touches by PICO that we have. I think, of the areas that we still haven't probably probed enough, I don't know, and I have not checked this, but PICO has to report the bottom performing circuits to the PUC every year. And, it was not a point of pride when the circuit I lived on was in the absolute worst category. I would venture that the LMT circuits are now not in that filing. And that's one quick way to know if we have a really dire situation. And I think we can check that out on you can call the PUC, get the report, go online and see. They don't give you they might give you they won't give you the exact date locations of the circuit, but you could ask them for how many are in Lower Makefield. That's an area where I think we could follow up on with them. And then there's probably some discussion that we have to keep up with our state legislators about in terms of service level agreement with the community. There are other states that have penalties for where customers have repeated power failures to incent them to fix those circuits. We don't have those laws in Pennsylvania. It might be something to consider as well. Unfortunately, the township doesn't really have a lot of sway directly over PICO, but we do have a lot of moral authority and people that can push. The good news is we have not had, when we have a really bad outage where it gets so bad that there's meetings with the elected officials higher up and down. We haven't had one of those in a while because we just haven't had a really bad outage, which is probably degree of luck, right? And some of it's their investment.
Yeah, I agree, John.
Yeah, me too.
Certainly in the time that I've been with the committee, which is getting on for 10 years now, I think there's been a tremendous improvement. And I think I don't know how many other committees like ours exist in other townships, but I suspect very few. And we've maintained the contact with PICO, and I think I hope at least that that contact with PICO has paid off. So, I've heard a lot of things about Ted Durand from elected officials, that Ted hasn't been responsive, but I think from what I've seen, particularly with this response on behalf of PICO, I don't think we could ask for more, really.
I know we're going to talk about sort of the ERC's future, but it's funny. I didn't think about it until John Kingham, you just sort of talked about that, and I'm not sure. I was on the board of supervisors like 15 years ago, but before this board was formed. But I will tell you that I wonder if having sort of a non-political committee like ours is, creates a little bit of a smoother flow because,
yes.
We're not, and John, take this the right way, we're not elected officials that might get onto a board meeting to pomp and circumstance, not for whatever potential, and I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying. So we're safe. We may be as safe for Ted to operate with, and I think one of the points of credibility that I've seen since I've joined is the depth of knowledge that the board members bring from different perspectives. So the conversations with Ted were very formative and detailed because of the experience on the electrical engineering and different backgrounds. So I found it to be not a contentious conversation or accusational. It was informative, and I think it created the free flow. So I think I don't know, John Kingham or Lee, if you would agree, but I feel like there was maybe that's one of the benefits, that we can act as a liaison, if you will, for the township to be able to kind of continue that detailed relationship. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree, Jason. I like to think that we've obviously been nonpartisan. So, and in our meetings with PICO, some of them have been quite funny because Ted is very careful to make sure that he doesn't give anything away as far as circuit details are concerned. And we found the best meetings were when he had some engineers with him. and then we'd start to talk with the engineering guys, and he would very quickly start to say, stop, stop, stop. You know, that one of the engineers put a map up on a board. You might have been at that meeting. I don't know, John. They put a map up on the board of various circuits. We're starting to take photographs of it. Poor old Ted just about died. So,
so I believe I have photographs of that map. If you're if you're curious, yeah.
So, so Ted is obviously in his external affairs manager role has done a very good job for Pico, and I think he's done the best we could hope for this committee in letting us know what's going on. So I'd like to maintain that contact with Ted. I don't know how much longer he's going to be in that position, because I know myself from experience that eventually the gray hair takes over. But anyway, so
well,
Ted, and
as I often threaten Ted, I do have his cell number, so I know where he lives. And
yeah,
you know where he lives.
Yes. He served as a township supervisor many years ago in Western Montgomery County. I think
he did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to go back and I'd have to look that. Yeah.
We know where you live, and I know how to cut power off to your individual property. No, I'm only kidding. No, I think these guys, have done a really good job in doing that, and maybe it wasn't such luck on Saturday with what we experienced. Maybe there was some value to some of the work they've done. I think we have to, potentially give them some credit where credit is due.
Well, I just mentioned a short while ago that my lights in our house here, they dipped. I thought they were going to go right out, but then they came back on, and that's where the electrical engineer in me comes in. I know there are devices called reclosers working that automatically detect outages and they reclose and so on and so on. So I know we've got a lot more of those reclosers now in the township that bring the power back on. It doesn't wait.
But in general, I don't recall even in the tri-state area news seeing a lot of stories about extended outages anywhere. But maybe John's right. Maybe we got lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think luck. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, which takes us on to the next item. Unless there's any other comment there, I think the PICO response is good. The only other item on the item 4 on the agenda is other items. Unless anyone has other items, we'd move on to what's the future of the ERC.
I have no other items.
It's been a 10-year ride for me, and it started off with Kristen Tyler. She was our liaison with the BOSN, John, and she served us well, and we've been through various other supervisors, and now we've got you.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you for, I'm sure you sped up the communication with the township manager, and we got a fast response. Thank you. So what is the future of the ERC? I would like to, quite frankly, I don't know if anyone else agrees, just put the committee in abeyance, not cancel it, but just say, hey, we'll sit back for a while until such time as we feel the need to reconvene. Can you put a committee in abeyance?
You can have a committee that meets only when necessary. So I know we have an emergency management committee that meets relatively infrequently.
Yeah.
As well. That's one option. I think that's certainly plausible. Then the other option, something to think about, is possibly combining the two, if that were of interest, because a lot of our concern is around, when a power outage occurs, it is it's sort of as part of a larger event. It's emergency related, but those are a couple. That's an option. I mean, it's and that could be fine if you felt that would be the way to go.
Can we maybe meet somewhere in the middle on that, where maybe our cadence is annual? I know we've tried to meet quarterly.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to point back to the earlier discussion about what I think has been over the years, and I would argue maybe not any of the years I've been here, but the development of the relationship with PICO in lieu of the BOS, nonpartisan sort of touch bases, so that we can represent and report back to the township and share information with them through PICO, in an environment. So maybe we move to more of like an annual cadence, but one of our mandates is that cadence is our maybe annual engagement with PICO's, the person in Ted's role, or Ted, and that way we can create some type of a model to be able to represent the township's needs. And I think if we do a cadence like that, it'll give us time to gather information, or the board of supervisors maybe to share with us, or however it would work, any concerns or thoughts, so we can think about it in that regard, because I would hate to go dormant, for lack of a better word, until there's like an emergency, because of the expertise that members of this committee provide.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's some value in some sort of maybe slower cadence, but not to sort of just come together when we're responding to an emergency. So
that could be that might be an excellent idea. And one of the things that you may want to consider as part of that is that the agenda when you meet is to focus on major outage events, and then keeping PICO accountable for what their investment strategy is for our infrastructure going forward, so that you say, okay, we're going to meet with you once a year, and these are the questions we're going to ask, or this is what we're going to follow up, and this is what our report's going to say. We either had X outages of significance in Lower Makefield, and they were caused by this, and we're addressing them this way, and this is the future of investment for PICO. That would probably be easy on PICO's part and your as well, and probably maximize the value, and limit the time, right?
And it may still give our citizens who wish to share information with the board of supervisors or us, adequate time for that information to sort of find its way into that, dialogue with PICO. But that's just my thought. Obviously, my committee fellows may disagree. So
I agree.
Well, first, John, we discussed before merging with some other committee, and we decided we didn't want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the committee suggested and I think it was Dan Grenier suggested we take up wastewater treatment as part of our interest.
Yeah.
You didn't get a show of hands on that one, so
hard no.
Yeah. But you see it too, also, if you take a look, when you talk about a major outage, PICO, I don't know what your definition of a major outage is, but if you talk about a biggie, PICO's not going to care about us. They're going to have to answer to the Public Utilities Commission. They're going to have to answer to the media. I think our benefit, our strength is like John Kingham there. You live in Yardley Hunt. You have 4 or 5 extended outages a year or something like that. That's where we should attack PICO, because the major events, they're going to get nailed from entities higher up than us.
yeah.
Well, I would amend your comment, Lee, to say maybe I understand what John Lewis was suggesting, but maybe, what we might consider on a local level significant. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't probably need to be quantified right now, but I agree with you, Lee, like, things that impact Lower Makefield residents, not be what a larger major event, which is going to be regional.
Yeah.
It may be more localized for our town.
Yeah, I think we
Whatever.
can. Yeah, we can provide good input from a local level. I mean, like John,
Right.
Mr. Kingham, with Yardley Hunt and wherever. I don't know. Do you live in Yardley Hunt? I don't know where you live, but I could talk about my outages if I have.
Well, I'm in Hidden Oaks, so.
So, I'm at the Regency here in Yardley. I can talk about, if I have a few outages, I think our committee would probably be an ideal way to bring that to Pico's attention or to the board's attention to contact Pico.
Well, anyway, we have brought Pico to the table over the past 10 years, and I think the response in Ted Duran's missive was reflects the relationship that we developed with Pico.
I agree.
So,
and I think I would also add, I think if we folded inside of another committee, or we went dormant, or however you want to phrase it, and it was seen by Pico that way, it may make it more difficult for us as a township on the whole to have the dialogues. And I think the continuity of dialogues, John, has been the value here, right? Not just the knowledge that this committee brings, but the fact that it's been fairly consistent. Build a relationship. I think somebody alluded earlier to, Ted probably won't be in that role forever. So the ability to, for us to be consistent if there's changes on the Pico side, and we have the continuity of local knowledge. And I think that's important. And I don't think we have to do anything if we change our meeting cadence. I don't think it has to be that big a deal. I think we just stay formed, and then, as we've almost done, John, by default, John Kingham, you'll send a note and we'll have a discussion as to whether we feel we need to meet. And if we don't, we table the meeting until such time that we have a reason to meet.
Yep.
That's my thought.
I agree.
Yeah.
And then, John, I would just say to you, like, I know you know this at the board level, I think the liaison selections for not just our committee, but all committees are really important. I know that you guys have to cover a lot of different committees and people have different interests, but some of these committees have specificity to them. And, as much as the Board of Supervisors can take that into account when the assignments are coming, would be, I think it's done already. I'm just adding my 2 cents.
Yeah. Well, there are some cases where you want to be cross-trained on this, because there are a few committees. I think I've been to almost every committee, but you want to know the different committees. But then also too, we have some where technical skill set's important, like the Trenton Mercer Airport Review Committee. That took a while for me to get up to speed, and the same thing with the, EAC and some others. So yeah, no,
yeah.
I understand. That's, yeah.
Yep. Yep. I'm glad you're on this committee now.
Yeah.
So I apologize for the hat.
That's okay.
Well, at least no one's
I
brought
recognize the company on it.
What is on the hat? You better
Oh.
forward you.
I work for a competitor of Jason's.
Oh, okay, yeah, it's coming back to me now. Yeah, I've heard
Yeah. But
yeah.
here's the thing. Our company's market cap's what, $2 billion, and his company's market cap is 100 times that, maybe.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
So a little difference in size.
Yeah, but I think, in fairness, the business I run inside of our mega business is probably not that much of a blip on. I saw that my company, because we do a lot of I'm with Oracle, guys, and we do a lot of government contracting, and I've seen some numbers come across on some of these multi-year government database agreements that are quite honestly staggering. And I don't know about your CEO, John, but my CEO owns 98% of the island of Lanai in Hawaii.
Well,
Okay.
my CEO's not quite there yet, but
Well, I've got quarter of an acre in Yardley Hunt. Yeah.
and I have a quarter of an acre in Clearview Estates. So.
No, that's good. But no, I think we're all in agreement then, right? Like we just keep chugging along. Um, I'll just say, I love listening to you guys that are experts, and I think we all bring different skills. But it's been good, and I think the engagement with Ted has been impressive from this group.
Yes, yeah.
So, motion to adjourn.
Please,
Motion to adjourn.
do I hear a favor? All those in favor of adjournment, please raise your hand. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Lee. And thank you, John. And thanks for
Hey, to all of you who might celebrate something this weekend and holiday, and yeah, back to the matzah.
And
Okay.
for those celebrating Ramadan, right? It's
yeah, anyone. It's
any of them, yeah. Yeah.
It's that time of year,
I'm not going to get into that, being British by birth. We were told we didn't have to worry about anything like that, so whatever. Yeah, so.
Sounds like
we won't go
by the
down
way,
that rabbit hole. Yeah.
Just for shits and giggles, excuse my language. I know we're on TV, but when I briefly served as a supervisor, I picked up the previous supervisor's assignments, and you guys are much better than when I had to attend the sewer committee meetings.
No.
But those guys are your counterparts, because they would flap up the maps of the sewage system and knew where all the routing was, and it was a different flow, but
yeah. No, that's the underground world I don't want to be part of. Yeah.
I wonder how
on
many.
a serious note, if the question of railroads comes up, John, I spent a long time, the last 25 years of my career working with railroads. So on the electrical side.
My time in the last 25 years stuck on the wrong side of the railroad.
Yeah. Well, of course, you hear a lot of people complaining about that, but anyway.
Well, our predecessor count designers, who are long since gone, thinking that running our railroad lines across our main thoroughfares or connecting roads from Edgewood to Stony Hill, even across Heacock or whatever it's called there, when a long industrial train can break down or there can be an incident on the tracks and cut the township in half, probably wasn't the best thinking at the time.
But they had no concept, though.
Yeah.
Right. That Edgewood would grow quite the way it did.
I know.
Yeah.
No concept of Bakken crude, which is the crude oil that has a very low flash point. That would be on there. So
that railroad was laid down in 1860 or whatever. So and it's now the major freight railroad on the East Coast. So
like a couple, what was it? John Lewis would know. What was it? 6-8 weeks ago, there was an incident on the track, and it was a Sunday, I think, and the whole. I think it was an unfortunate situation, but the whole township was shut down. I mean, I've had times where, because of where I live, what I've actually done is gone back out towards Coles, and had to get on 95 and come up and get off on the other side of where 332 is, because the surface roads were all shut down. So
well,
there should be, John Kingham, aside from the railroad and not thinking about it, there's pipelines running through this community too.
Well, what's the solution? Trucks? I don't know.
No, I'm just saying. No, the pipeline runs through. Correct me if I'm wrong, John Lewis, but I think that it goes through Memorial Park.
Yeah,
and we couldn't put baseball fences on the outfield of their softball field out there, because it runs right over the pipe, and you can't have any type of permanent structure near the pipeline.
Yeah.
Interesting stuff. So All right, guys. Have a great holiday. Thank you.
Thanks,
great seeing you guys. Have a great holiday.
Somehow